Hello and welcome to Michigan Planning Today, where we explore urban planning and real estate development issues across the state. I'm your host, Bob Gibbs, and today's guest is Mayor William Wild from the city of Westland.
Hey, good morning, Bob.
Welcome, Mayor. Fine.
Good.
Thank you for joining us.
That's my pleasure. Thank you.
The city of Westland is, I think, one of the 10 largest cities in the state of Michigan.
Yeah, we have a population of 85,000, which makes us the 10th largest city.
And it's located roughly where?
We're probably right in the middle between Detroit and Ann Arbor, about 20 minutes from Detroit, just north of Detroit Metro Airport. And some of the cities that surround us are Livonia to the north and Canton to the west, and the city of Wayne to the south.
And you're right on close to I-275, so easily accessible.
Yeah, right at the Ford Road exit there.
Now, I noticed that the city was founded in 1966. That's a pretty new city.
Yeah, you know, the city, we recently celebrated our 55th anniversary, and, you know, Westland was part of Nankin Township. All those communities out there made up Nankin Township, and if you look at the shape of our city, I think we were the last city to incorporate, and we kind of took whatever land was left.
And its boom period was sort of in that 60s, 70s time frame?
You know, it's been on a steady growth spurt, you know, right up through the 80s, into the 90s, lots of housing. You know, we have about 26,000 single-family homes. We have about 13,000 multifamily homes, and we're still building homes and condos, and there's a lot of interest in multifamily. So we're not totally built out yet, but we're getting close to it.
But you've got room for expansion and growth.
We do, and we've been very creative now on you know, try to utilize some of the space that has not been developed in the past, and we're kind of changing our policies and having a much more open look at density. Is something, you know, a long time ago that was a bad word, but now it's something that we're looking for.
There's lots of small infill opportunities too, I know, where you can build new pockets of housing and commercial.
Yeah, we're starting to see that now on some of those, you know, maybe odd-shaped lots, and you know, there's a new trend now to kind of you know, take commercial property that's been failing and rezone that to residential, and it's something that we're taking a look at in a couple locations.
A lot of the shopping centers built in the 60s and 70s had a lot more parking than they need today, so those are opportunities, aren't they?
Boy, it sure is. And when our city was founded back in 1966, Bob, it was because they were going to build Westland Shopping Center in that area of town, and that's actually where the city got our name, was for that shopping center. And you know, fast forward now, you know, the mall is still open, but as you said, there's a sea of unused parking around it. So it's a little bit of an eyesore, but it's also an opportunity for growth in the future.
Yeah, and the Westland Mall is still a very vibrant, exciting shopping mall with lots of great retailers and stores to go to.
Yeah, you know, it's still open, and while they did lose Macy's as one of their anchors, the Kohl's there does very well, and JCPenney's is still open, and the mall's had to reinvent itself, and it's maybe lost some of its luster over the years, but we're still doing ribbon cuttings there, and the mall is still open, and they're ready for the shopping season for the holidays.
Yeah, it's a beautiful mall. I've been there several times. It has a lot of nice shops. So here we have a picture of the City Hall. This is quite a redevelopment story in itself. You want to tell us about this, Mayor?
Yeah, so this is something that we're extremely proud of. In the city of Westland, we had an undersized city hall on Ford Road that was only about 11,000 square foot, left over from the Nankin Township days, and the city quickly outgrew it. But politics always got in the way. Every time you want to talk about building a new city hall, it got very political. But the need was there, and then during the recession, as a lot of the big boxes in our you know, around the West End Shopping Center started to close, there was one building there that kind of stuck out that we could kind of vision as a future city hall, and it was a Circuit City building. And at the time, it was only 9 years old when they closed the doors. It was a great building, 60,000 square foot. And we were able to pick it up. We worked with our city council and our TIFA board, And we actually created a very modern, beautiful 60,000 square foot energy efficient city hall. And we have people come in and visit this from around the country all the time to take a look at this creative reuse of this big box building.
Well, it's really become a landmark case study of how to redevelop older, underperforming or closed shopping centers. So this was a Circuit City electronics store that had closed.
Yep.
And the city was able to just keep the building but repurpose it and redesign it.
Yeah, we put a new facade on the front of the building. What I wanted to do is I didn't want to look like we jammed a city hall into a former Circuit City building. So we kept the shell of the building, and you can see a lot of the red brick that's you see on Circuit Cities, but you can see we put a fresh facade on it, lots of glass. We've added some architectural, slant to the ceiling that kind of set it apart. And the grounds, we have gardens on the grounds, so it's really appealing, and it's we're becoming very well known for that city hall there.
And I know I've been in there. It's more than just the city hall, too, isn't it? It's really a community resource.
Yeah, so it's 60,000 square foot. We use about 35,000 square foot every day for city hall operations. And then the rest of the building, we've opened up and kind of created community space and a banquet facility. And this is the place for people in the city of Westlake. They come and they have wedding receptions, and the homeowners associations meet there. And it's really turned into a busy place almost 7 days a week.
Now, Mayor, you said this was financed by a TIF district. Can you tell people what a TIF district is and how does TIF districts finance things?
Well, so TIF is actually an acronym for Taxing Increment Finance Authority. So in Westland, we created our TIFA years ago, and the TIFA, when, I hope I get this right, Bob, and you know this probably better than I do, but when the TIF was put into place, it takes the taxable value of the area, and then as the area starts to develop over and above that original tax base, those tax dollars can be captured. And they can be used for a lot of things. There are restrictions, and in Westland, in our history, we've used this TIF capture to build a new modern library, and we also used it to finance the city hall. And so it gave us one of those tools. We did not have to go out to the public and ask for a millage to build city hall. We were able to do that with the tax dollars. We bonded it for 20 years. And we're 7 years into that bond already.
Yeah, without getting into the weeds, the TIFA districts is really a way of building public improvements without taxing the local residents. It takes a piece of property, improves its value, and then captures that value to pay for itself. So it's a really very nice resource of making public improvements without really being taxed by the general public.
Yeah, it's been an incredible tool for us, and we're going to continue to look for new ways to use it in the future as well.
So tell us about you personally. You've got a very long CV, a very distinguished career. How long have you been the mayor, and tell us a little bit about your background.
So I've been mayor of the city of Westland for the last 16 years, and in Westland, mayor's it's a strong form of government and a full-time job. Prior to mayor, I served for 6 years on the city council and 2 years on the planning commission before that. So I've got a little bit of time in local government, Bob, and I'm getting the gray hair now to prove it. Before I was involved with local government, I was a small business owner. I was in the automotive recycling industry. It was something my family was into, and my dad helped me start my first business there. And eventually I sold that business, and I've been working full-time as mayor ever since.
And what prompted you to go in from the private sector to the public sector?
Well, my dad says that all politicians have that one screwed up gene in their body, and I think I was born with a little bit of it. So, it was always the business side of it. I really enjoyed being on the planning commission because I was on the front lines of all the new projects coming into town, and the projects were the part that always excited me. So as I went into city council, obviously we had a much larger role with that, and then as mayor, it gave me a chance to kind of see that vision through, and economic development is one of the departments that I'm very active in, and it's something I've got a passion for. And that's the type of stuff that excites me. You know, it's not exciting working on taxes and water bills and flooded basements and all the other things that mayors have to do. But the economic development part excited me, and as mayor of my hometown, you know, actually seeing that development come to fruition was pretty rewarding.
Speaking of rewarding, there's a nice park. There's a number of nice parks that the city has built. What's this one?
So this park here is actually, it's, earlier I mentioned the city had an undersized city hall. This was some of the land that was adjacent to it. This was in a different district. This was in our downtown development authority district. What we took here was we took some, there was a former park here that had some environmental problems, but through a brownfield redevelopment, we started to rebuild this park, and we added this amenity here. What you see here is the Westlake Farmers and Artisan Marketplace, and the city always wanted our own farmers market, and we have a great building here. It's multi-purpose that we use for a lot of different things. Just to the north of that same park is a smaller park. It's kind of a kids park. We call it Tatton Park, and what you see here is an incredible spray park that we added on the heels of the farmers market. So now on that site you've got a farmers market, you've got a spray park, and then early next year we're actually going to build an all-inclusive space theme park called Mission to Mars. So it's really going to be an incredible place, and right off that Ford Road corridor in downtown Westland.
So it's really many parks in one park.
Exactly. So some people get confused because now you punch in Tatton Park and you can't find it on Google, but if you punch in Central City Park, which is the whole park together, you'll find it. But it's really turning into quite the popular area.
And I know it has a farmer's market. I've been there several times. It's a very nice market.
Yeah, you know, farmers markets are just a great way for the community to come out and, you know, spend some time with each other, experience the outdoors. In the beginning, we were like everybody else. There was more demand than there was farmers, but now we've got a really nice mix of farmers and artisans, and it's really turned into a very popular place. And now we sprinkle a little bit of music and jazz through there, and it's kind of turned into Thursday nights in Westland. Really turned into this area's a destination.
What advice can you give to other cities that maybe have recreational needs or that don't have enough parkland? How does one go ahead to do that?
Well, you gotta have the buy-in. First of all, when you recognize that you have the need for it, then you can all agree that we got to do something, and you just have to, you know, take a look at these different areas of your town, and I always say is shoot high, you know, because you want to have high-end amenities, and what we found with this park, Bob, is that once we put in those high-end amenities, it was easier for our other parks in the town to people say we want amenities just like they have at Tatton Park in our neighborhood. So it really gave us a chance to raise the level of amenities throughout the city.
So it may be something people don't even know they miss until you build it and they can see it.
Yeah, you know, especially during COVID, our parks got utilized more than anything. It was amazing seeing the amount of people that were out in the parks, and the park that we showed here was the centerpiece of that. So it really did show that importance of parks and recreation in the community.
Were there any surprises when you opened the parks?
You know, other than the amount of people that showed up, but I remember in the beginning, our DPS guys were out putting caution tape over everything. And like, we're opening up these parks where we're saying don't use anything, and it just didn't feel right. But I think that the surprise was that how many people came out, and even though we were saying that social distance and stuff, I mean, it's easy to do that in a park, but the demand for our parks, and that hasn't really slowed down, because now that, you know, we're moving past COVID, people are still utilizing those parks every day.
And it's probably a good part of community building, improves the quality of life, probably property values and other amenities for the community.
You know, absolutely. And in Westland, we've always been a bedroom community, and as you know, more of the retail and the restaurants are going back to the Detroit area, you know, we're really doubling down on making Westland a really high quality place to live and keeping it affordable. And our parks are a big part of that.
I know Westland is known for its quality neighborhoods, nice housing stock, a variety of housing from single family to multiple family, and now it's open parks. in space and parks. What's this, Mayor?
So in Westland, we've really spent a lot of time reusing and repurposing older buildings. And this building right here was a former elementary school in the city of Westland's oldest neighborhood. The neighborhood is called Norwayne, and it was built with temporary housing to support the Willow Run plant back in the earlier war days. It was set up as temporary housing, but here we are, 60 years later, the neighborhood's still there and it's still thriving. So what we did is we took this vacant school, the schools were gonna tear it down, we repurposed it into a community center, and we run all the city's, a lot of housing departments through there, a lot of social programs. And because the building was really big, we actually just attracted a tenant, and Kronk Boxing moved from Detroit. They're in Westland now, and the Kronk Boxing Gym is kind of set up here, and they're drawing in kids from the neighborhood, but they're also helping rebuild the neighborhood as well, so it's been a great fit.
A lot of communities have schools that are closed or are going to be closing that could be repurposed. Is it very hard to get this off the ground?
With these older buildings like that, it's amazing how well built they are. And this building here was the first school building that we incorporated, but we tried to keep the look of it, so when you still go by it, it still looks like a school. But our architects that we partnered with, they did a great job. We really did a good job of utilizing the space, and the building was set to be torn down, but now it's a community asset.
Here's another repurposed building, I think. What's this, Mayor?
So this is on the private sector now. The private sector is getting involved with it too, and this was in the area around the Westland Shopping Center. We've marketed as the Westland Shop and Dine District. What you see in the picture up on the upper left was a vacant, it was a buffet restaurant that closed down called Fire Mountain. The private sector came in, they bought this building. They kept the building. They took off the roof, but they actually kept the building, and then they built around it. And there's an incredible new banquet facility. It's called the Soho Grand. And when you drive by it, it's just amazing how the level of amenity that they've used and the high-end finishes. You can see the lobby area there. But inside the Soho Grand now, they have a 1,000-seat grand ballroom, and they also have a 350 person smaller ballroom, and they also have a Yemeni coffee shop that's open 7 days a week. So it's a really nice amenity. It's really going to be a nice anchor for our Shop and Dine district.
So many cities are losing their restaurants and their shopping areas, and I think they sometimes just don't know what to do. What advice can you give to cities that have these underperforming or closing commercial centers?
Well, you just got to be creative. We've been fortunate in Westland to have a lot of new entrepreneurship come into some of these former buildings. There's kind of all up and down, our corridors in Westland. We're starting to see small restaurants open up in former locations, and we've had to learn how we do. We had to change the way we do things. We have to, now we have outdoor seating. We didn't allow it before. Now we're putting in drive-through windows in areas that we never did before, and we're waiving parking requirements. And so we're doing a lot of things to remain business friendly. And with all the people we have in our town, there's always that base there for shopping and dining. So we've been doubling down on it.
You mentioned a couple of planning and zoning things that cities can do, which is so true, because these sometimes don't get redeveloped because they require large amounts of parking, or they don't allow outdoor dining or drive-throughs, like you said. And sometimes the market is artificially suppressed just for non-market reasons like that.
Yeah, I think COVID gave everybody a chance to really kind of give them the chance to reset some of their local rules, and maybe in a way that's been difficult in the past because of COVID, we were able to make a lot of those changes.
Yeah, the drive-through windows are a classic. A lot of planners don't allow drive-through windows, but with COVID, that's really necessary now.
We found that some of our best restaurants, the only way we could keep them open was the only way that they were able to keep open was by doing carry-out service. Mm-hmm. And we don't think twice about doing a drive-through window for a fast food place. So why wouldn't we give one of our better restaurants an opportunity if that's what they need to stay in business? So we've gone back and we've made a lot of those changes and the community accepted it wholeheartedly.
What kind of cautions are there when you're promoting redevelopment of underutilized place? What should cities be careful about what not to do?
I think one of the mistakes that we made was sometimes when you have vacant space, you'll lower your standards and you'll start to let in a lot of things that perhaps down the road you wish you wouldn't have done that. And it's a balance because the cities don't like vacant spaces. The landlords, they want to fill their space, but a lot of the uses, and one of two quick things, Bob, is during the recession, we had a lot of open space in our industrial parks. And we always had people that wanted to do used cars, and we didn't want them in our corridor, so we pushed them back in the industrial parks. And then as the industry came back, I didn't have any space. I had all these car dealers that we didn't want there. And then the same thing in our commercial space. One of the things now is creating small banquet facilities in the strip malls. And the landlords like it because they got to make their taxes, but they're creating a lot of problems in our strip malls and stuff. And so you just have to take a look because trends change, and you got to kind of take a longer look at things, but try to remain business friendly.
But you mentioned a very important element, and that's to maintain high standards. Require the buildings be designed well with durable materials, well landscaped and all of that, because I think you're right, a lot of communities kind of get in a panic and take whatever comes along, and putting in the high standards builds on itself.
One of the things that we learned on our City Hall project is when you look at that project, we used high-end materials and architectural design. And then what we hoped is that our investment in our building would spur, private sector development. And so when people came in and they wanted to build projects or repurpose buildings in that corridor, we would point to City Hall and say, look at the bricks that we use, look at the landscaping that we use. This is kind of what we're looking for. And the private sector saw that the city invested in that, so they thought it must be, there must be a smart decision. And we're starting to see that. If you look at that Soho Grand, you'll actually see they incorporated that slanted roof that we have on City Hall into their design. So it's starting to trickle down through our corridors.
Well, I think also the private sector wants predictability, that if they're going to build a great building, they know that the other buildings around them are going to be at a predictable standard and predictable quality, and probably quality attracts quality.
It does. I think, and we've seen that with private investment following good public investment.
But I think that's all a very good clue, is that when you have underdeveloped property, that by having high standards, predictable zoning, and flexibility, you can have it repurposed. What's on the drawing boards right now for Westland?
So one of the things is when the city bought the Circuit City to build our City Hall, there was another vacant building that was a former Service Merchandise, and the same guy owned both of them. So we did a package deal. On half of the land for the Service Merchandise, we built a new fire station. And then the other half, we've been trying to figure out what to do with it. So our TIFA is going to move forward with a new concept where we don't have a good name for it. We're calling it City Hall Park right now because we don't have a great name yet, Bob. But we're taking this land that's adjacent to City Hall, we're connecting it to City Hall, and we're going to build a new park. There's a lot of people are familiar with Kellogg Park in downtown Plymouth. The land that we have, you could actually put 3 Kellogg Parks into this space. We're going to tie it into City Hall, but it's going to be high-end amenities. It's going to actually be kind of like a mini Pine Knob. We're calling it with the Grand Lawn. And so there'll be a nice feature that's a lawn that's slanted with a band shell at the bottom. Westland's known for our Blues, Brews, and Barbecue event. This is a spot that we would eventually move our Blues, Brews, and Barbecue. It's connected with City Hall, lots of outdoor amenities, lots of nature trails. There's a water feature between City Hall and this property that now will have a boardwalk around it and a bridge over it. It's just going to be a great place to get out and spend time in the community.
Has the public investment in the public realm and parks really been well received?
You know, it has. We've seen our property values go up in proximity to these parks. And like I said, as the city's tried to reinvent ourselves and double down on being a bedroom community, parks are the one thing that we could control. We own them. We've been able to raise the amenities in our parks all throughout the city. And it's paying off. This right here will be a park that's in our biggest commercial corridor. So it's going to be a magnet too. It's going to bring in traffic to the area, and people will come to this park on a weekly basis for events. But then they're going to spill out and shop in the mall and go to the restaurants. And so we're hoping it to be an economic driver for the area as well.
You mentioned a few times that Westland is a bedroom community. What does that mean? All communities have bedrooms.
Well, at least the way I understand it is that means you have lots of houses. I mean, there's some communities that are, that are built on a lake, or they have a defined downtown, or they're an industrial-based city. In Westland, our city, we have lots of houses, lots of neighborhoods. We actually have 50 neighborhood districts, and so we call it a bedroom community because that's where you go home at night and that's where you live.
We're going to unfortunately have to wrap things up, but what kind of advice can you give to other policymakers, other mayors, or other communities?
Well, I would just encourage them is that, these type of projects we talked about today, they're hard to do, but they're definitely worth doing. You got to get lots of public input. The only way that I was able to see some of these things through as mayor was I had to have buy-in not only from the elected officials, but the public. And so we spent a lot of time working with the elected officials on what they wanted to see, working with the public, and then sharing the credit at the end of the day. But, this is the type of stuff people like to see elected officials work on. They want to see something that you can actually, in your time in office, you've done to improve the community.
Well, thank you very much, Mayor, for joining us. And thank you for joining Michigan Planning today. Until next time, be well.